My name is Just a Fan, and I am here to talk about Veronica. I really want to start by saying this. The reason I watched this movie, how I even heard of it, is some random video, random promotion, random something happened on the internet somewhere, and it said Veronica, super scary, and it's, making people lose their minds, and it's really well done, or something like that. And I thought, okay, cool, I gotta check that out, because I enjoy horror movies. I think it's fun to be scared, especially when you have good company around, or good friends, or good people to enjoy the experience with. I think it's a fun, social, healthy thing to do on some levels. So I thought, sure, I'll watch it sometime. And then just yesterday, a couple days ago, very recently, that was a long time ago, but very recently, I saw something and it said, Veronica's unbelievably scary, once again, similar things. And then it said that 1 out of every 100 people can finish the movie. And I was like, what? Humanity's pretty desensitized to a lot of horrific things out there, or a lot of movies, so really, 99 out of 100 can't finish the movie. The internet's really weird. We live in a very bizarre age of people say strange things to try to convince people of things that just hardly make any sense, or at least hard to believe. But since I already was thinking, hey, this is a movie I want to check out sometime, I said, alright, now's the time to go for it. I'll see if I'm one of the 99 or one of the 1. Turns out I'm one of the 1, because I was able to finish the whole movie, and hardly ever did let's go spoiler-free for a while here. I'm not going to talk about many spoiler things. It's not a really bad movie. It's not even really a bad movie. And let me talk about some things that don't really spoil anything, but talk about the style and how I like that type of thing. So on that note, style was pretty cool. The camera was the best part. It's a rare thing for me to have to say, not to have to say. It's a rare thing for me to say, because I don't usually think like, wow, that camera movement, that camera work was so good, that really made the movie. And in this case, that was mostly the positive stuff I would have to say about it. It was very involved. It was moving in the right moments at the right times to the right places to give you a good visual on what was going on. And I liked it. I was pleasantly surprised, especially from the top, right at the beginning. Even right from there, it had some great stuff going on. The way it would not sway, but just get to the right spot and kind of make the viewer feel like they were there. I mean, it completed its goal as a camera. The camera itself, the viewer got to see. What you want is the viewer to feel like you're there for a movie like this, or to a degree, and it did achieve that in some pretty good ways. Not just for feeling like the viewer was there, but just for style. It really stylistically brought it together visually, and I thought that was awesome. Also, in terms of visuals, I would say that it's pretty good in a lot of cases for just visual stuff. Not spoiling anything specifically, but moments where the viewer is supposed to feel scared, or maybe have a jump moment, a couple of those, not really too many, but those visuals were just, you want the viewer to have something ingrained in their mind, where it's like, whoa, that just really unsettles me. It's got some decent ones in there. I've seen other movies that do very similar things as this one, and that's the kind of thing that started getting to me after a while. I was like, well, alright, but in this day and age, that's just generic, or that's just stereotypical or cliche for a horror movie, so but visually great for some certain things it did. I guess part of the point, this is at the very beginning of the movie, and probably I didn't even read the movie description, honestly. I think I might have read like a sentence on it with that first advertisement I saw for it. I might have read something like, there's a seance that this girl does and the spirit is bugging her, or something like that. Or her siblings too. So I guess it's not really a spoiler to point out that in the movie they say it's like based off a true story, or it's like based off the reports of a detective in real life or something like that in 1991. So it doesn't really matter to me whether that's true or not, but I guess that means that the creators have to follow some kind of path that makes it at least sort of fit that story they're trying to recreate in some way, whether it's truly fictional and they just want to give that effect to the viewer, or whether that's a true thing and they want to represent that in a cinematic way that makes it entertaining. I guess either way. So I appreciate, if it is the way it is, I guess I appreciate what they were trying to do with it, and they did do it pretty well. I just don't feel like they had a lot of imagination after a while, and it's another one of those scary movies. Ironically, it's been happening recently, where the movie's doing pretty good, and I like the setup, and it's like, cool, alright, good stuff, good acting, and then it's like, well, blah, blah. And then by the end, it's like, well, all I can do is shrug at it, which I was doing. I was shrugging by the end and just saying, okay. And I'll get more to the spoiler things later where I point out some questions I still have or some questions that the viewer should be asking, because that's the viewer's job to some degree. The film was supposed to warrant some kind of questioning, some kind of speculation, some kind of imagination from the viewer, which is a good thing. I mean, that's what gets the viewer connected with the movie. In this case, though, it wasn't the kind where I was connecting with the movie. It was just kind of, okay, one of those kind of mumbling, grumble moments. So, it's odd. It's hard to talk about this movie. It's hard to talk about most movies without spoilers. Other things I like, I guess the actors are fine. You got some kids in this one. Veronica is the main character. Spoiler. Right off the bat, they do a pretty good job establishing who Veronica is in terms of her lifestyle, like what she has to do. She has 3 siblings to take care of, 3 younger siblings, and again, this is right at the beginning, so it's not really a spoiler thing. And I guess she has a single parent mom, and her mom's working a lot, of course. There's that stereotype about the movie, but what I found myself saying at the very beginning, was I'm glad she doesn't have these 3 younger siblings who are just crazy and running all over the place, and her life is difficult, and she feels like she has to escape, or she needs to do something to get out of this mentality of, oh my gosh, these kids in my life are driving me crazy. She had her older sisterness down to a science, like right off the bat. She was taking care of kids, making sure they get up, making sure they get fed, making sure they get bathed. So it was pretty cool to see a non-stereotypical main character with younger siblings for a scary movie where the character might feel like they need to escape from the life that they're in. And another cool thing is after they show the mom, because I was like, is there even a mom in this family? And they finally show her. She's in bed because she had to stay up late working at her cafe, I think. And that was fine. And I was so glad to see the mom and the daughter Veronica talk for a little bit, and she said, all right, well, you keep resting, I'm going to take the kids to school, we're going to school now, or whatever. And it wasn't like I was so glad it wasn't like well, you're never here for them, and this is terrible, and you need to cut back your hours, you need to be around more. They could have done so many things that would be so cliche or stereotypical or just generic, generic single parent working really late, generic teenage daughter taking care of kids, and just power struggles with that. They didn't do that at the beginning, and I was really impressed that they just had a movie where they had characters, and they knew what they wanted to do for a while. So that's the setup for me. The setup was pretty good, and here's a cool thing I like about the beginning of the movie. It doesn't really have a profound impact on the movie, I think, and I say I think because I'm going to talk about more of the profundity, the profoundness of the movie later in the spoiler section. But there was a solar eclipse in the movie, and just because I live in the United States, we just had an eclipse recently where the solar eclipse we had in 2017 perfectly came over our town. It was really cool. So at least for me, being a resident of an area where we just had a solar eclipse and seeing the pure beauty and magic of that, it was kind of neat seeing a solar eclipse in the movie and how they were in the school appreciating it as well and saying, hey, we're going to look at the solar eclipse, here's some science and facts behind it, and it was just nice that they portrayed that in a positive light. I don't know if it really did mean anything for the movie, but just for me watching the movie and enjoying it at the beginning especially, it was like, oh cool, so here's a cool setup and we got some eclipse action. That's cool, I like that. Part of the frustration with this movie, though, was kind of near the end, or the later half, or the second act and third act. I was finding myself taking back the things I had said earlier. I was just thinking about how, oh man, what a great setup, and we didn't have these generic sibling things going on, and we didn't have this generic single parent arguing with the one responsible teenager thing, and then later they came up anyway, so it was like, well dang, I guess they kind of went back on the things that they set up pretty well, in my opinion, and just kind of, did whatever with them. It's almost like the second half of the movie was... It's not like it was written or directed differently or had a different writer or a different director, but the style or the choices the creators made to set up what was going on in each sequence or in each scene, it was just kind of different. Like they took a different route to establish things, and it didn't really fit with the rest of the movie, at least for me, so it kind of threw me off, because later in the movie we do have a little bit of an argument between the responsible Veronica, teenage daughter, and the single mom. It was like, well, you're never around. I mean, I was like, well, so now we're bringing this up, and we're already halfway through the movie, or 2/3 through the movie, and now you're bringing up how you work too much, and your mom needs to be there more for the kids to help you with them. I mean, it was too late to bring that kind of thing up, especially because it really hardly had any bearing on the story. I mean, gosh, the The story's, it's a fine story. You know, it's not super innovative and it's not super generic in most cases, but it was just like, why your elements of horror movie storytelling are kind of coming in too late when they should have been established earlier if you were going to do them at all. But if you were going to do them at all, why do the setup you had and then later, you know, kind of go back on that and recreate a different kind of image for the family and the dynamics between them. I don't know. I keep rambling about the same thing here, but I guess my main problem became after a while, it started becoming, it seemed like it was going to be a clever movie, especially with these darn promotion advertisements things. I don't know who writes those or why or what they're trying to do. I mean, I guess they want people to be like, oh, it's a really scary movie and only one person can finish watching it out of every 100. I'm gonna watch it now. Like, clearly, I guess based on the message I'm getting from these ridiculous promotions, it's just trying to get people to watch the movie, which is fair. But when you go in with that kind of expectation, or when I went in with that kind of expectation and I came out so blah about it, it's like, gosh, come on. So be careful. If you're going to watch this movie, if you're trying to avoid spoilers for now, just be careful to not overexert your excitement or overexert your anticipation. Go in, it's worth seeing. Go in and see it, but don't ignore everything you've heard some random source on the internet saying this is going to be really scary. Maybe just consider it as it's another unique horror movie that came out. It's in Spanish, and that you're just going to watch it, you're going to enjoy it, and there's going to be a few images that are going to be jarring, and I'll talk about those soon in the spoiler area. But I'm trying to think of, should I say I recommend this movie to everybody? Do I not recommend this movie to anybody? I would recommend it to pretty much anyone who wants a decent, more than decent, a decent plus scary movie. I'll say that at least. I guess another thing I would bring up is the fact that it's in Spanish. I already mentioned that just once here, but some people can get thrown off by that. Me, as a language person, I am very used to subtitles. I use subtitles all the time, I'm a German speaker, but even for watching a German movie that I'm well acquainted with, I always keep the English on there just because it's good for the brain to hear the German and see the English. So for me, subtitles, no problem. I can get behind that, even for a scary movie like this one. I saw one comment, the recent promotion I saw for this, the one that actually had that ridiculous statistic of 99 out of 100 people can't finish this movie. There was some comment of someone being generally rude and just saying, like, I couldn't handle it at all because I had the stupid subtitles. I couldn't even freaking watch it. It was just like some really immature comment about someone complaining about subtitles and how it takes away the movie for them. I mean, this is the internet, so we do have people who just complain because they want to complain on the internet, and that's what gives them some kind of fulfillment. I really don't understand that. But I will say, based on that kind of concept, though, if you are a person who doesn't like subtitles, I hope you understand Spanish, because otherwise you're going to be watching them the whole time to try to figure out what's going on. Even if, with the subtitles, you'll have some trouble figuring out what's going on. And I guess that's kind of getting more into the spoiler area, so let's just say spoilers are fair game. Now, I apologize if I left something out that you want to hear. Feel free, don't watch the rest of the video yet if you haven't seen the movie, but feel free to send a question to me or make a question on the comments. I can try to answer your non-spoiler questions before you see the rest of it. But here we go, spoiler time. Let's do it. I have trouble feeling supportive or sorry for characters in scary movies that kind of put themselves in the situation. In this case, we have Veronica and Rosa and the third friend, whatever her name was. I was honestly shocked how much those friends weren't a part of the movie, which they don't have to be, but it's pretty typical for any kind of scary movie with a situation like this where you have your young teenage girl, young teenage boy, whatever your young protagonist is, and they go through something scary with their friends, and that was kind of an important thing to them. You would think, and you often see that they kind of, maybe they split up for a bit and they all realize separately that something bad happened. They come back together and start working on how do we get out of this situation or how do we solve everything. But we didn't really see that here. And again, I don't want to sound hypocritical and say something like, well, they should have done something more typical or more, generic or stereotypical. But I think that kind of thing gives structure to movies. And when you have a movie like this one with Veronica, where she went through this experience with her friends, very specifically with them. I mean, later in the movie she says, I need you two to help me do this again. But then we spend most of the time with her and the siblings. It was kind of like, well, I mean, what was almost even the point of the friends? I mean, yeah, I guess maybe they didn't have to be in the movie. And I'm glad they were in the movie. I mean, it was a good setup to have, the solar eclipse going on, but we're in the basement and we're doing a seance kind of thing. Like, it's a cool setup, and I appreciate the fact that they try to do that kind of movie. But then if you're going to have those friends be in the movie, maybe give them some more oomph or solidity or just something to work with rather than just, we were there to be there for it, and then we were there later in the movie just to say, you're crazy, Veronica, what are you talking about? And I guess, I almost forgot about this part, I guess at the party thing, the girl Rosa, or the other girl, I can't think of the third girl's name, but she was like, you told us you're gonna die today or something. Like, I was like, whoa, that would have been a cool thing to know earlier, because it came so late in the movie where I was like, oh, okay, all these other things have already happened, but now she's gonna die? I mean, it would have given the viewer a lot more suspense or a lot more mystery and prediction of, ooh, wait, is she gonna die? How is that gonna happen? Kind of like in The Ring. Remember The Ring, the PG-13 movie from the early 2000s or something like that? You get the phone call, hey, you're gonna die in a week. I mean, that's a cool setup near the beginning of the movie for a character to have to go through, and for the viewer to see that and be like, all right, we have limited time, we have to figure out how to get out of this, what are they gonna do? It sort of also reminds me of It Follows. I saw that one recently. That was one I was always excited about, and then I finally realized, oh, it's on Netflix, and I watched it, and it was pretty fun, and I like that concept of something's gonna follow you, and you have this suspenseful feeling of, is it gonna catch up? What happens when it does catch up? Can it come earlier? I mean, what are all the details? And that one wasn't time-based. The It Follows movie is just, I guess, geographical or physical-based. They're at point A and I'm at point B. How, they have to get from point A to B. I mean, that's kind of it, rather than a week or an hour, or in this case with Veronica, 3 days is sort of what we saw. So, what was I even saying? Oh my gosh, I went on a huge tangent there. Oh, my original point of, I have trouble feeling sorry for Veronica or having a lot of support for her when she enters in the seance thing and is like, all right, let's do this seance, and they just go right for it, and there was hardly any hesitation. It was just like, I'm going to talk to my dad or something like that, and boom, we have all these issues now. So it's not like I didn't like her character and I didn't want to support her, but as a protagonist, it's just interesting to me that we would have someone who walks so willingly into a situation, and then she's kind of just isolated in this movie trying to figure her way out of it, when it might have done the viewer better justice if we had something else to hold on to. And here's a little bit we did. Near the beginning of the movie, when Veronica's helping her siblings out and such, I was kind of thinking to myself, I hope we get some good scenes where we see her, her siblings talking about how much they like her, really appreciating her, because at first we didn't really have that. It was very basic. Their conversations were one-dimensional and just kind of, let's get to school now. There was nothing really there character-wise. And after a while, there are a few more things of, Veronica's going to help us, or Veronica's going to protect us from the spirit. That was a little later. But just things where they seemed to appreciate her better, and she was there for them. I liked seeing that connection, because for the viewer, that was like, okay, cool, so these siblings like each other. We have a good connection kind of thing, I think. It's implying that we have a good connection with these siblings, and it'll make me appreciate more what Veronica's trying to do, and also appreciate more what's happening to the siblings and in the house. So we got a little bit of that, but maybe not enough, or maybe there could have been a different piece of the movie where it wasn't even sibling related, but just something that helped us get behind Veronica and say, I'm with this girl, I want to see her succeed, I do not want to see her or her siblings die or anything, or get possessed, I guess. And that's where the big issues start for me. I mean, I have so many questions about what the movie was trying to do. I just used the word imply a few seconds ago here. The movie was trying to imply something, and that's kind of what it did too much of. We didn't even get any real solid structure in the movie of, this is a demonic possession, this is a spiritual thing, this is a house thing, this is a family thing. I mean, it could have been all of those things, right? We have our seance, awesome, cool, and then we have this demonic, entity messing with this girl, and is that a possession? Because at the beginning I was like, oh, okay, she's possessed. Got it. But then she didn't seem to be for most of the rest of the movie, and then it started becoming about her dad, and something about her dad trying to come visit her or her siblings. Oh my gosh, and speaking of the dad and this part of this aspect of the movie, this spiritual, demonic thing, I really like the scene. I wish it happened earlier in the movie. I really like the scene where the brother, I don't remember his name exactly, it was more of a Spanish name than I'm used to saying, but he said that, Dad came and visited me, and he read to me, and I was like, whoa, really? Like, that's cool! And I kind of wish it happened earlier in the movie, because it made me think, like, wait, so what's going on? Like, that was one of the first moments in the actual movie, one of the first, really, where I kind of really got into it for a moment. I said, that's a cool aspect, because it seemed like the dad was dead or gone, or I don't even, did they even explain what happened to him? But just the concept of him coming back and talking to the kid, the younger sibling, but then not Veronica, it was like, well, so what is that going to mean? What's he doing here? And then he said he's going to come back for me tomorrow or something like that and bring me back to where he lives. I was like, oh yeah, like, this is good. I'm getting the goosebumps. And so I liked that about it, but then that was maybe the deepest it got with the concept of the dad being demonic or being evil or the spirit of him coming back. I mean, I don't know. I mean, what did they really explain? I don't think anything really came through and really followed through. I guess it's a phrase I could use here. There was so little follow through with any concept or aspect or element for a horror movie that they implied. They would imply it had something to do with the dad. They would imply that it could have been a demonic possession thing. They implied that it was Veronica herself, doing these things and she had just gone crazy or something. But did we even really get any follow through on any of those? I don't think so. I mean, I thought I watched the movie pretty closely, and maybe I missed something in there. And of course, people in the comments are going to say, yeah, you missed this very obvious thing, maybe where this really explains what it was. But as a single view, and I just finished watching it, 20 minutes ago. It's not like I spent a week thinking about this. I'm coming right out of it, and I didn't do a Just a Fan Gets 10 Minutes just because I knew I would have so much stuff to say about it. So I don't know. It's very interesting. This movie had some good visuals. I guess let me point out the visuals now that I'm in the spoiler area. I want to say some visuals that I really did like. Particularly the scene that was most jarring was the second dream sequence, which I'll get to the dream thing in a moment. But the second dream sequence when you have your younger siblings, waking you up or whatever, and that was funny because I had that thought earlier in the movie where I said, oh, her siblings aren't crazy kids that are driving her nuts. They're just they're just kind of there, and I was glad they didn't have some stereotypical we're the crazy younger siblings, and then at that point they were kind of acting like the crazy younger siblings, and I was like, now we're doing this, but then they started eating her or something, and I was like, that was jarring. I mean, can you imagine your younger siblings eating you? I mean, that was visually jarring, and it was just a moment of whoa. And of course, as soon as they started doing it, I'm like, oh, it's another dream sequence. That's nice and original, but at least visually it was very good. I mean, like that, seeing that skin just like stretch off her arm, like, oh. And I'm a squeamish person, by the way. I do not like it's hilarious. I love scary movies, hate blood. I cannot do organs or blood, just things where the body gets tortured. I have so much trouble watching, so that one really got to me, and I just love how it was so strongly like, oh, just skin getting ripped off of her arms kind of thing. That was cool. So at least visually, that was cool. It was jarring. It was legitimately scary just to think about your younger siblings eating you. But of course, when it's a dream, then... And on the dream thing, we live in an age now, we've had decades of movies, tons and tons of horror movies that come out, we've seen lots of stereotypes and cliches. So the first dream sequence, there was that thing where she was like laying in bed or something basic like that, and all the hands came up and grab her, and like, it's like, immediately when that happens, like, it's a dream, okay, fine. I mean, how clever a movie that claims to have 1 out of every 100 people finish the whole thing. I mean, I was like, come on, a dream? And then the second dream sequence, I just described that with the kids eating her. At least that dream was cool, but then it was another dream sequence. And I'm like, do we really need 2 different dream sequences in a movie? It's very cliche to have someone go through something really scary and then wake up and, they're sweating or they're wide-eyed and they're looking around and their heart is pounding. Maybe they could have left out the first one, just because when you do it twice in the same movie, just by now in this modern age, it's like, all right, that's another. It doesn't have any effect. I guess you could say that me personally, I'm desensitized to that type of thing. Maybe there's some people out there who found that totally scary and they were on the edge of their seat and they were just feeling it right in there. And for me, it was only just visually cool. But at that point, I already knew it was going to be a dream, so it's just like whatever. And so many things in this movie became, well, whatever after a while. I did like visually again, specifically in spoiler area. I really like the image of the demon thing, whatever it is, whether it's the dad coming back to haunt them, or it's a true demonic possession, or whether it was just in Veronica's head, like whatever it is, because we don't know. And it at least looked awesome, and the way they did the cool thing with the shadows was pretty cool. So I guess the first time we saw that I can remember was when she's going into her younger sister's room. Both of her sisters slept in the same room, and it was like creeping along the walls as a shadow, kind of like Hook style when Peter Pan's chasing his own shadow. Pretty good stuff. But in this case, much scarier when it kind of reaches over and touches the papers. And I guess there were amulets that she said. I don't even know what that was all about. But it touches those papers and they burn up. I mean, that was cool visually. Because we see lots of things like that. We see lots of spirits or poltergeists or, entities doing things. But it was like, okay, that's kind of cool, shadow-wise, especially because you also got to see whatever it is in, like, a physical form, too. I mean, near the end, when we had it following her down the hall kind of thing, that was nice. I mean, it was just, like, kind of black, kind of vague. We didn't really... I was, like, looking close, like, oh, what does it look like? Like, is there a face on there? Like, what is that? And I'm glad it at least was vague enough to leave some to the imagination, because as many people say, the imagination has the most scary stuff to any given person, because that's where you really recreate the things that you think are scary, and it just had a decent effect. I could easily see why someone would say that was just boring and generic and just some black figure, but I thought it worked for at least what the story of the movie was trying to do. So at least it fit in this particular film. And I thought that just those visuals like that, they knew what they wanted to be. And I've said this before, I usually tend to appreciate movies that know what they're trying to be, even if it seemed like visually the movie knew what it wanted to be, but maybe not story-wise, because again, after the first half or first two-thirds or so, the style changed a bit, and it just fluctuated into, we're just doing things now, and we're not really gonna follow through, like I said, with much stuff. So it's sort of, it half knows what it wants to be. It knows what it wants to be at the beginning, for sure. I guess I would say that. It definitely knows what it wants to be at the beginning. Maybe it forgot what it wanted to be, or it didn't know what it wanted to be near the end, and that's possible. You can easily have movies where they definitely know what they want to start with, they want to establish this and that and have these characters, and maybe they don't know what they want to do with the rest of the movie, and they kind of have to stumble on through and see what they can do with the characters, even if they didn't have the follow-through totally planned out. Maybe that was the case here. I wasn't there, so I really don't know. Other things that threw me off included the nun. So they go to this, is it a Catholic school? Whether it's a Catholic school or not, I don't really know. But there's this nun who's blind, and she can see something. We had only 2 scenes to even explain what she was even doing. There was the first one where they were in the basement, Veronica and her were in the basement, and she said that I can see things, and she was like at the wall or something, and she could see something, and I was trying to figure out what they were talking about, and what did she even say to Veronica? I mean, it didn't seem like anything of super big importance came out of that scene. It was more establishing that the nun kind of knows what's going on, and I guess I appreciate the movie for the fact that we had some help from a nun, rather than like, it was 1991, so in the good old days when we didn't have our cell phones, or nearly as many cell phones, and our smartphones especially, and our tweeters, and our snapgrams, or instant chats, or whatever they're called. So it was back in the good old days where we didn't have a character, like in Paranormal Activity 4, I think. We don't have a character who just Googles, like, I'm being possessed, what do I do? Or this thing is called this. Like, they just Google and they find this information. The concept of having a nun who's experienced something or gone through things, who can sort of mysteriously or with uncertainty teach our main character or protagonist about something that they might be going through, that's a cooler concept than just, I'm going to go to the library and look it up, or I'm going to go to Google and look it up, or I'm going to go to Yahoo or whatever. It just seems like that's just trying to be like, haha, Google's in a horror movie. Like, it's just like, oh, it's kind of lame. And I guess, okay, it's realistic. Yes, if someone's really going through a demonic possession type of thing, they might Google, like, what do I do about this? But for a movie, it's just kind of lame, I guess. And so in this movie being in 1991, that was just a cool extra little aspect to say, hey, cool, there's no Googles here. We're just doing this on our own. We're doing this with the help of the nun, I guess. But then again, why didn't Veronica ever ask for more help or ask for anything? I mean, near the end of the movie, she was asking her friends to do another seance, and she was asking her mom to leave, like, the kids at the cafe or something, but I mean, that was it. I mean, she really took on most of this stuff alone. And by the end, I mean, well, and here's the problem I guess I have with this. By the end of the movie, it was like, oh, it's me. I mean, that was like a big reveal scene. They even had like this reveal flashback and montage of all the things that she had gone through that led up to this moment. And she was like, I'm the one who's doing this or something. And I, first of all, found that hard to believe. Like, did she really do all those things? And I guess the movie, I mean, the creators make the movie, so did they make the movie in a way where it simply looked like she was seeing someone else do it, and that's what we were supposed to think until then? Or was that really the reality, and she just thought it was her? I mean, they didn't follow through on that. So I was just thinking, if it was her doing all those things, then why would she ask for help anyway? And then, I mean, I guess she wasn't aware that she was doing anything, if she was doing anything. But then, at that point, how can we tell what's going to be her knowing when she's being possessed? Or, sorry, I guess her not knowing when she's possessed and doing things against her will, as opposed to when she's not being possessed at the time and doing things to her will. I mean, do you see why I'm confused? It didn't really come around full circle. It didn't complete itself. It wasn't fully fleshed out. It was just some ideas that had a good, clever start that I don't know. It didn't work. I mean, did it work? I don't really even know if it worked or not. I mean, I guess the whole point is you want to have a scary movie. It's a rated R, rated PG-13. I don't know what it is, but you have some movie where you want to scare the audience to some degree, or has some amount of gore to some degree. And of course, for the rating reasons, there's the language of the nudity or whatever. But so you're trying to scare the audience and make them feel something on the inside. In this case, some kind of heart-pounding fear and excitement and adrenaline. And as a movie, it does that to some degree, and for some people it will be to a higher degree, to some people it'll be a lower degree. I mean, it's amazing. You can't, I think on Half in the Bag, my favorite movie reviewers and my favorite review show, I think they point out how you can't just tell someone what's going to be scary, similar to how you can't just tell someone what's going to be funny. So, I don't know, as a movie to be scary, my original point here, as a movie to be kind of scary or kind of get under your skin and make you think about things, it sort of accomplishes that on a basic level, but when you really dive into it and really think about it, as I do with movies, I keep running into dead ends. It's like, ugh. I mean, how many times have I tried to say something in this review, and I just kind of have to say, ugh, I just kind of grunt, and I don't know. That right there, I think, is a sign of how this movie doesn't fully accomplish everything it should have accomplished based on how it was set up, and based on how it was promoted, and based on what it was honestly trying to do. So that's one of my final things I would say about the movie. But I do want to talk about this. So by the end of the movie, they're really implying that Veronica did everything. I mean, there was a couple good, decent hints. So when the hand we as the viewer saw the shadow of the hand creeping up her sister's, legs, body, and then gets to her neck and starts choking her. And then Veronica runs over there and she starts choking the sister herself, so to speak. I thought that was so odd, because it was like, wouldn't you be taking away... I mean, that motion she was doing on her sister there did not really represent trying to help her not being choked. And I get that she was saying, I was trying to save you and not choke you, and the sisters were scared. So they were almost kind of implying, which was in a good way, that, ooh, so is the viewer supposed to think that she's really doing it anyway? Because what kind of motion is that to go to your sister trying to save her and making the exact same motion and squeezing movements that a choking hand would be doing? So that was cool. And then later in the movie, we have that big reveal scene of the sequences of, well, she was really choking her. She really was. That's what we really saw. But it seems a little inconsistent with what the viewer was seeing anyway. The viewer was seeing her trying to help in all of these situations until the end. So is that we were supposed to think that, or were we not? I mean, I don't really know. So that kind of thing bugged me. And the other thing about the ending / the beginning that bugged me is the fact that it started pointing out at the beginning that we have this detective's report. This is all based off the report of some detective who responded to an emergency call about this, which I honestly forgot about till the very end. And then we start seeing, and this happened. This is fine. This is an okay way to do a movie, but you show kind of the end of your movie first, just to kind of establish where the characters end up, and then you show, in this case, 3 days earlier, and we see how they get there. That works. And so I forgot about the detective until the end, and then he's in the apartment or whatever it is, and at the end of the movie, he's typing, and that's when the words come on the screen, and it kind of ends like that. But I was like, who cares what this guy thinks? I mean, the story we saw the story. That's what the viewer really needed. Why is this guy, this detective we saw once before, only because it was a future forward thing, or a flash forward? Why is it ending on him? Why is it the big ending of what he says? And what did he see? He came in, he responded to this call. He comes in the apartment. When what he sees, because and again, camera work great on this one, but what he sees is just Veronica, kind of stereotypically cliched, leaned back, and the demonic entity was like shoving its hand or arm into her throat, and without him being able to see that, she just kind of is in that terrible suffering position of being whatevered, and then she just falls to the ground. That's all he saw. So what does he know anyway? I mean, he wasn't the right character to give some kind of first-hand report at it. What they could have done better, probably, would be to have him interact with Veronica at some point in the movie, just because maybe she would go to the police at some point and say, hey, I'm having some issues and my mom's not around to help. Can you help me? Maybe we could have seen, maybe he'd be the only one at the police department to actually listen to her, and there'd be some kind of connection, and there'd be some familiarity there, and something where it would give any kind of meaningful fulfillment for him writing about this story, so the viewer can really take that and say, yeah, that's the story right there. But it didn't do that, and maybe it could have been not him at all. Maybe he could have just been some generic detective, which is okay. Maybe one of her friends could have written about it, something like that. One of her friends who was there for the original seance, one of her friends that she tried to reach out to later, but they ignored her and pushed her away. And then maybe at the end she was thinking, oh my gosh, she really did need help, and she was talking to me about it. She asked me some questions at a couple of times, and she wanted me to just like reconnect with her and figure these things out. And I said no. I mean, at least the friend would know what was going on to a degree. We just have this detective who shows up at the end and does his detective thing, and then he's the teller of the story. It just didn't work, and that's maybe a point that doesn't actually matter to most people. But to me, trying to figure out how this story really works together, that was another element of if they're the one really truly creating the narration that we as the viewer end up seeing, especially when they imply that it's taken from a real life detective's narration. It's like, well, I know nothing about this guy or what he thinks of it or how he feels. It's just some visual cinematic representation of what somebody else had read from some detective in real life, theoretically. And we just have so many layers here of just like uncertainty and confusion. Maybe not confusion, but just not solid. There's no solidness here. Solidness. There just isn't enough here that really builds up the story together. It's kind of crumbly throughout most of it. And in the end, I would say that I was mostly annoyed just because of the fact that we have this really impressively pathetic promotion saying that 99 people out of 100 aren't going to be able to watch the whole movie. Going in with that kind of attitude, that's the most disappointing part about it, just because it's just annoying. But really it comes down to, yeah, it was decently scary, yeah, it had the good visuals, had some fine acting. I particularly Veronica. I mean, the scenes when she was being like possessed, the very first scare in the whole movie is her at the seance leaning back, I think, and her mouth was just really wide open. It was kind of like, wow, gosh. I mean, whether that was somehow modified by CGI or somehow used with a prosthetic or something, still good stuff right there. I mean, that looked really cool. So it was good. It was all right. It wasn't super good. It wasn't super bad. It was bad good. I'm not going to say it was super good, not going to say it was super bad, and I'm not going to say it was good or bad. I'm going to say it's a good bad movie. Maybe a bad good movie near the end. But I think that's where I want to end my review on Veronica. Please ask questions. Please let me know what you think. You can always email contactjustafan@gmail.com, or you can, of course, leave comments on the video, because I would want to see, honestly, am I the only one who thinks this stuff about the movie? Are there some things I agree on with some people and some things I don't agree on? Because I'm really, honestly, not sure where I fit in. And again, as usual, I haven't looked at any spoilers. I haven't looked at any opinions. The one thing I saw about the movie that someone said was, this is stupid subtitles and they took me away from the movie or whatever. That's the one thing I saw. So I might be in this weird minority who just didn't appreciate or didn't fully appreciate what the movie was trying to do for story and for scares. And maybe I'll be along with everyone else saying, like, yeah, this is this is not what it was proposed to be by these weird advertisements. So I'll find out as soon as anyone says anything to me about it. And seriously, thanks for watching. I really like watching these movies. It's a lot of fun sharing my opinions for it. If you have requests for other scary movies, this one makes me think a lot of Wreck. If you haven't seen Wreck before, or Quarantine, I'll try to get a review on those here soon, because I do actually really appreciate what Wreck tries to do. And the reason I bring it up is because it's also a Spanish movie with English subtitles for it. So I think I'll head in that direction. If you have any questions about Wreck or any things you want me to address about that movie when I get to it, great. That's another thing you should ask about for comments or emails. Otherwise, I'm going to sign off here right now, and you can probably bet that I'm not going to be trying to do any seances anytime soon. Not because of this movie, but because why would someone do that to themselves?